the entire time. All right, here we go. So let's talk about supply and demand. The reason I am at Instagram, I'm on with Facebook too, so you'll see me going back and forth. But the reason I'm wearing my South Carolina State University Bulldog shirt is because, first of all, it's South Carolina State, right? Yeah. Secondly, it's because I got a degree in marketing. So I was in the business building. So being in the business building, I had to take all these business classes in order to graduate. And two of those business classes were microeconomics and macroeconomics. Both of those classes I was not a fan of. But out of all the business classes I took, one thing that always was interesting to me was supply and demand, and understanding supply and demand and how they affect each other and how they work in the real world. And of course, when you're in classes, you can't truly understand supply and demand and how it works. It's only when you get out in the real world. And in the last 2 weeks, we have seen supply and demand go haywire, including today. Okay, so I want to discuss it. All right, I want to discuss it in the best way that I know how, in the way that everyone, no matter who you are, if you are watching this, whether you're on Facebook or here on Instagram, you can understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so I am going to try my best to explain it in that way. Usually how I explain things on Daily Money Live with Janae. Anyway, let me take these shoes off. So what we're going to start with is what everybody's been talking about today. Okay, gas. Let's talk about supply and demand for gas, right? So when I was in Los Angeles, I heard about the whole Colonial Pipeline situation, the hacker and everything, and they had to cut off the pipes. When I heard it, I was listening to NPR, and they were just explaining it all. I know Colonial Pipeline, where I'm at, has some big tanks about 30 minutes away from here. And so I knew what they were, and I knew what the situation was. And so I was like, okay, all right, as long as people don't trip, it'll be fine. Because I had listened to NPR. So those who are not familiar with NPR, it's National Public Radio. It's all over the country. I listen to NPR on a daily because I want to know what's happening domestically in the news as well as internationally. I don't watch the news on TV unless it's like local news every now and then if I'm on my mom's house, or I catch it in the morning on my phone or something like that on their website. But I don't watch the news. I don't watch CNN, MSNBC. I don't watch Fox. I don't watch news, okay? I listen to NPR because NPR tends to be an unbiased reporting, okay? Like, they're reporting just the facts. Like, this is it. This is what it is. This is what they said. This is what it is. Like, no twist to it. No, sensationalism. No, it's none of that. It's just like, these are the facts. And, and they talk, very just straightforward. Okay, so I listened to NPR while I was in Los Angeles when all of this was going down, and they were talking about the company, and then those in the industry were saying that the pipelines, the Colonial and so forth, as long as people didn't lose their minds and go to the pumps, they had enough to do what they needed to do, and they had a strong feeling that the pipelines would be back online by the end of this week. Okay. And so everything could just be smooth if everybody just stayed calm. All right. Well, we know today that didn't happen. All right. And by the way, just so you know, today is Tuesday. Okay. Today is Tuesday. One of the pipelines, pipeline number 4, came back on last night. So one of the pipelines all the way from North Carolina up to Maryland is working again as of last night. But yet there was a panic today on Tuesday. The pipeline one of them started working yesterday. But yet there was a panic today. And now all the gas stations basically don't have any gas because everybody's just putting gas in their car even though they don't need it, and just filling up the different things, like just having a straight panic attack over this. Okay, so let's talk about supply and demand and what this could lead to. Of course, now the supply is lower than it usually is because of the hackers, and because they had to cut everything off. But the demand went overboard. and because demand has gone overboard, because of the panic, you risk shooting gas prices up to a ridiculous amount of money. Okay, so right now gas in the Southeast was already pushing $3. Okay, like, and it was like a 30-cent gap before this happened. Like, I would be somewhere and it might be $2.49, and then I go somewhere that says $2.79. Like, it was no consistency in the first place, and now you create this panic buying and make the supply go completely down. And now look what happens. More than likely, if this doesn't get resolved by the end of this week and the whole panic stuff keeps happening, you're going to push the prices up. And what happens when you deal with these gas companies and this industry, they have no problem shooting the price up, but real fast. But then all of a sudden it takes too long for it to go down. So you all are helping them shoot the price up. And guess what? Even though the supply will be back plentiful, that's what they're talking about. It'd be back plentiful. Do you think they're gonna bring that price from way over $3 down real fast? No, because they never do. And just to give you another like a look at it a different way. So those who just joining me, I'm talking about supply and demand. This is an impromptu live. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. We're going to talk about gas. We're going to talk about the chicken shortage. We're going to talk about jobs. And then I just thought about something else. I'm going to talk about housing. We know what's going on with housing. That just came back in my mind. So I had to edit these posts. So when we went on lockdown last year in March, okay, March, April, May, June, we were on lockdown for some months, right? You seen what happened to the gas prices, yo. Oh man, I'm going into yo. Y'all know I'm serious. I say yo. You seen what happened to the gas prices because the demand was so low and the supply was so high that prices almost went under $2, and definitely went under $2 in a lot of the country because the demand wasn't there. And what makes it so interesting now is that majority of people are still working from their house, including people like me. We work from our house. We don't need gas right now. If you didn't need gas, it was no need to go and fill up your tank if you work from home. And let's say that the gas don't come on this week. And let's say I run out of gas. I have no problem. It's me sitting here, them 2 kids being on virtual school here, and me ordering food to my house. Because if I don't have no gas, they can't go nowhere. I can't go nowhere. It's no need to panic. We are in a whole different lifestyle than we was last year, 2 years ago. Like 2 years ago, this happened, and you are supposed to be inside your offices each and every day. That is a cause to panic. But every company in this entire country has figured out how to work virtually. So if you can't get to work, there's no problem with you sitting at home doing your work. There's no problem for majority of people, okay? You obviously can't be a garbage man and a mailman doing that. But majority of people can do that. Majority of children have worked. In fact, all children have worked virtually last year. So they can do that too if gas ran out. There's still Uber Eats. There's still Postmates. There's still Pizza Hut delivering to you. Like, it was no need to panic like that today. And I'll go a little step further. Other than the whole gas prices may rise off of this, especially if the panic buying keeps going. And you create a bad shortage that wasn't even going to be there in the first place. If that continues, then guess what? And this is for everybody who has a 401k or 403b. If you looked at the numbers earlier, I don't know how it ended, but I lost $500 about 3 o'clock today. Like, this kind of stuff is messing with your real money. Your real money, your tens of thousands of dollars money, like you got in investing, like 401k, 403b, it's messing with that kind of money. Like, you trying to fill up your gas tank or save a few dollars before the money go up, and you done lost $500 today. $500. And that was at 3 o'clock. I don't even know how it ended. It might have ended worse. But if you got a 401k or 403b, this kind of behavior will make you lose money in your investments because it's making the market panic, just like people are panicking at the gas station. So that is about the gas. All right. So let's talk about next. So what about restaurant? Yeah, it's not everybody. That's not everybody that has to go to work, but a lot of people, millions, can be at home and they were at home that don't have to go out and about. Okay, they can be just at home. And a lot of times when we talking about the construction workers, they drive to a location, they're there all day long. So, and the people who go to restaurants, they go there and they work their shift and they come back. They're not driving back and forth. The only people that be driving back and forth is truck drivers, and a lot of truck drivers are able to go to certain locations that already have their gas there, just like rental cars. I'm talking about majority of the people can be at home if that gas ran out. Okay, so it's very few exceptions, especially we just went through a whole year of a pandemic with people at home and nobody on the streets but trucks. Nobody on the streets but trucks. So people can stay home if things happen. Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about chicken now. Now, there has been a chicken shortage for at least 2 weeks, and I didn't really like pay no mind until last Thursday and Friday. And this is a different kind of supply and demand. So those just joining me, we're talking about supply and demand. All right, we're talking about supply and demand. And so the chicken shortage last Thursday and Friday. Thursday, I went to Chick-fil-A, and I could get my stuff that I wanted from Chick-fil-A, but they did have on the app, due to a chicken shortage, there's some things we can't offer. But mine was cool, right? So I just kind of like pushed it to the side. But the next day, I went to one of my favorite restaurants that I get chicken wings from. And before I even ordered, she said, I just want to let you know that the chicken wings are a lot smaller than we usually have. And so if you order 10, we're going to give you 20. If you order 20, we're going to give you 40. We're going to double it up, right? And and so I already knew what the issue was, but I still asked just in case. I was like, is it a supply chain issue? Like things are not getting where they need to get. And it was a shortage of workers within the plants. Like that, like it's not like the supply is there. We got plenty of chickens. Like it is a Tyson plant like 30 minutes away from me. And those that see me going back and forth, I got Facebook over on Instagram. There are plenty of, like Tyson's farm is 30 minutes from us. We shouldn't have a chicken shortage. But what it was is that they don't have enough workers. And we'll talk about jobs and demand and supply and demand when it comes to jobs. But with the chicken, and when I got them, they were small. So she definitely had to give me double. Them some small chicken wings. Oh my gosh. Like even my daughter who's 8 years old, she's like 9 years old now. Why is these so little? I was like, girl, they even too little for you. Right? So there is a chicken shortage. And this restaurant, which is not a franchise, this is kind of like a mom and pop kind of restaurant. They're just trying to make it, right? They're just trying to make it. And so when she said it was a shortage of workers, then I definitely understood it. All right. I definitely understood that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I definitely understood why it's a shortage, because they don't have enough people to, do whatever they do to the chickens to get it out to us in our restaurants and our stores. So that was understandable. So just know that that's where the chicken shortage is. It's just a lack of workers. And before we get into the job thing of supply and demand, I'll go deeper into that when we talk about jobs. People, I've been seeing a lot of things on social media about all these jobs, why people ain't getting the jobs. We'll talk about that in a minute. But let's talk about these chicken plants, all right? Let's talk about the chicken plants. When all of this was going on, the pandemic, this last year, they were still going. These plants were still trying to go all over the country. You had some up north, of course you have them down here in the south, and they were trying to keep going. They were not doing anything to protect them workers from COVID. And they was catching COVID left and right because they were so close to one another and the ventilation wasn't there. It was bad in these chicken plants, okay? So if people stop working and they quit there and they told their friends, they don't care nothing about us. They just care about this food getting out. Of course, they're shorthanded now. Because I'm sure chicken plants aren't like the coolest places in the summer. Like it's probably hot in there and what you got to deal with. And then they won't even protect you from COVID. Like they're not giving you the right like mask to wear. They're not, making sure the gloves and the sanitation is done right. Yes, you're going to have a shortage. People are human beings. No, they're not going to work in there. And yes, you're going to have a chicken shortage because there's not going to be any workers. Okay. So that's that. So those of you just joined me, we talked about gas, supply and demand. We talked about the supply and demand issue with chicken and what issue is going on there. So let's move to jobs, and then I'm gonna go to housing, because housing just got added when I remembered it, because housing is very interesting. So if you're thinking about selling your house, buying a house in the future, you definitely want to wait for that. So let's talk about jobs. So once again, all over social media today and yesterday, for some reason, I guess because the jobs report came out last Friday and it was like 200,000 jobs. Nobody talked about the 900,000 jobs that almost 1 million jobs got created last month. Or the month before last. We ain't talking nothing about that, but we're gonna talk about this 200,000. And because of this 200,000, then like what was it, March? So March report was almost 1 million. Nobody was talking about the problem with unemployment checks then. But the 200,000 come out, and then now we're talking about why $300 needs to go away, right? And that's the reason why you're not getting jobs. But that wasn't the reason for the million before. But we're talking about it now. And so you see it work something. Yeah, they are gonna go high. We see all these things about people not working, all these jobs out here, and they not going after them and everything. Would you? Ask yourself that. Ask yourself that. The pandemic ain't over. COVID's still here. And you want someone to go and work somewhere for $9 or $10 an hour, where it might be not protecting them, because don't get it twisted. There's still people out here that's just coming in restaurants or coming in these stores without a mask on and don't even care. And so you want these people to come in there and tell people to put their mask on and do all this stuff for $9 to $10 an hour. And that's before taxes. And then put their lives in danger in case they catch COVID. And then what people aren't understanding is that not everybody's child is back in school. And so the people who have taken the biggest brunt of lost jobs or jobs they had to leave this whole year have been women, by the millions. And so when you're talking about somebody need to go back to work, you ain't even looking at if that person has to worry about childcare or worry about school. And then if they go back to school, a lot of these school systems just ain't even trying. The school system we got here, they decide 2 months before, it wasn't even safe for one school to go from 4 cohorts to 2, right? But a month later, it was okay for everybody to go back to school. That's what they decided. So how in a month did we make that difference? It went from not safe to safe. And then they stopped doing the screenings, temperature screenings and all that, because it took too long for the high school students to get into school. So instead of them just dealing with the high school students around that, they did the whole thing, K through 12. So that kind of stuff could be happening all over the country when you're telling people they need to go back to work. You don't know people's situations, okay? Right now, my son was going back to school. He was in school. They don't know what they're doing no more, this whole school system. So now he's home. So if I was someone who worked for somebody else, I would have to leave and be on unemployment so I could be here with him. So you don't know people's situations at all. And for you to want them to go back to a job that don't pay nothing, risk their lives, and then worry about childcare that's going to cost an arm and a leg, that's just unfair. So that's the supply and demand. So right now, the demand is high for people to come and find jobs, right? They need people to work, right? That's the high demand. But the supply is not there. People are not, they're looking for work, most people, but a lot of people are unless I find a certain amount to come back to work, it's not worth it, which it's not, by the way. And so when we look at it like that, this is what's happening. Now these companies, especially, food companies, want to actually raise their prices now, raise their per hour salaries now. So Chipotle said they're going to do $15 an hour. And if you work for them 3 years, you can end up making $100,000 a year. Oh, really? Y'all couldn't do that before? But now that the demand is so high that they need workers in order to keep their profits coming, now they want to pay people. The same thing with McDonald's and these other restaurants. They got sign-on bonuses of like $200 and $500 just to get people in there. But why not pay them in the first place? And here's a thing that people don't think about. You talk about people being on, government assistance, right? And healthcare costs too much too. Government assistance, right? You talk about that. Have you ever wondered to yourself that these companies are are the ones on government assistance? They pay so little money that it pushes their workers onto government assistance. So are they the ones that's really the ones on welfare? These companies, they're using the government to pay for their employees. That's what's happening. But now, because the worker is more in control right now because of the extra $300 a week, now these companies have to come up because the demand is too high and the supply is too low. So they have to come up on their wages. And that's what's happening with jobs. And so if you're one of the people that been kind of trying to shame people that they not looking for work, just ask yourself, will you do that job? Like, everybody in this country is a human being. And they deserve respect and they deserve a certain quality of life. And if they feel like it makes more sense for them to be on an unemployment but still looking for a job, but waiting for the right job and the right amount of money to take care of themselves and maybe their families, then that is them. Because the same people complaining about these individuals who rather get the best for themselves didn't complain about that $2 trillion tax cut gift in 2017. $2 trillion. And y'all talking about $300 a person? $2 trillion that went into stock buybacks. It didn't go into increased jobs during 2017. It didn't do anything. It was crap. It was a gift for the 1%. That's what it was. Period. It didn't trickle down. It didn't do nothing of that. It just enriched CEOs and those who were able to get the stock buybacks and all those who were investors in those companies. So, like, focus your anger where it should be. Not on people that's just trying to make it. Like, what sense does that make? We'll get off of that. So obviously you can see that the gas thing and the jobs thing is my my hot buttons. Not so those of you just join me on Instagram and Facebook, and you might have to look at the replay. I've already talked about supply and demand when it comes to gas, supply and demand when it comes to chicken shortage, supply and demand when it comes to jobs, and let's talk about supply and demand when it comes to housing right now, okay? Let's talk about supply and demand when it comes to housing. So those of you who want to get a house in the future, please pay attention. All right, let's talk about what's going on right now. So when the pandemic came, it could have easily went the way of 2008, right? I mean, it wouldn't have made sense to do it, but it could have, right? So in 2008, if you all remember that nightmare, a bunch of banks gave people houses they shouldn't have gave them, right? So you all know I don't care nothing about a credit score at all, okay? I don't care nothing about it. 2008 just ramped that up. So they gave people houses that had, 750, 800 credit scores, but they didn't look that they had $40,000 student loan debt, $20,000 car, $10,000 credit card debt. So as soon as the people lost their jobs or those rates readjusted, they lost their houses like that, right? Well, we're in a different situation now. So I'm going to try to explain this as the best way I can, not to talk at a high level. But what is happening over this past year, when people had to stay home in their houses, they realized, especially if they had to stay with other people, they realized this ain't for me. This ain't going to work for us. This is too small. We need a bigger home, right? Or they may have lost their jobs during, tens of millions of people lost their jobs. They realized, you know what? This house is too big. This apartment is too big. We need a downsize. So it started to be all these shifts about we need to get a house, we need to get a bigger house, we need to get a smaller house, all this stuff. Real estate agents were hitting gold mines last year and still are this year. But now it's got to the point that it is out of control, right? Now we're in out of control mode, just like the gas today. We're in out of control mode in the housing market to the point that it's probably going to be a bubble in the future, right? And I'll explain that. So right now you have a seller's market. If you want to sell your house, guess what? It's going to sell probably in a couple of days, right? Why? Because everybody's looking for a house for some reason. Everybody's looking for a house for some reason. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or not, you're looking for a house. And so they have these bidding wars going on where they are giving, $40,000 over asking price. I heard today on NPR, $70,000 over asking price. You have cash offers from companies, by the way, companies buying up houses. Cash offers unseen, so they don't even care to look at the house. They just take the money, let me win the bid, let me win the house and all that kind of stuff. That's what's been happening. It's still happening. Now they're saying that the market is starting to soften. Like I said on NPR yesterday, they had a whole hour on this, and what they were saying that before it was like negative 8% available in supply. Now it's like negative 1%. Supply. So that means it's starting to soften, and it's still a seller's market, but buyers are, regular buyers, not companies, are starting to gain a little bit of a foothold. They even talked to a couple that had lost out on 8 different offers. Like they had put in 8 different offers and they lost on all of them, and they ended up getting an offer, but they paid $30,000 over asking price. Okay. So what does this mean with supply and demand? So it's a high demand, low supply when it comes to housing. What this means in the future. All these people are paying overpriced for these homes. So if a house in my neighborhood sells for over $70,000 over asking price, like $70,000 over the average of these houses, what ends up happening is when the market cools in the future, then if I sell my house for what it's supposed to be, which is $70,000 under what they pay for their house, then that brings their market value down. And, and everybody else says, saying we're all $70,000 under what they paid, but it brings their market down. So they just literally, because they pay too much for the house, in the future have lost $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $70,000, because that's all it takes. It just takes somebody in that neighborhood to sell their house for the real price in the next few years. And you just lost all of that equity. That $70,000 is gone. Because you're impatient. Because you feel like you're missing out on something. That's what happened with the gas today. You're missing out on something with the gas. And now that's what they've been doing with the housing. And so when the market cools, and it will cool, then guess what? It's going to be a nightmare for those people who have overpaid for those homes. The same thing happened in 2008 and 2009. People were paying over market value for homes. And it wasn't even over market value. It was that the house was already marked up too high. So a house wasn't $400,000 and they were like, no, we're going to pay you $500,000. We want this house. That wasn't what was happening in 2008. What was happening is the house was already at $500,000 and people just had to come and get it, right? Now they are marking it up on their own. The buyer is marking it up on their own. They're actually putting themselves in the same situation in 2008, 2009 themselves. Like the market is not doing it. You're doing it. And just like 2008 and 2009, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. Like you think you're going to lose. If you're sitting here paying more for a house than it's worth, you're going to lose in the future. And don't have gotten one of those loans that they were giving out in 2008, because let me help you, okay? Let me help you in the spirit. They are still giving those kind of loans out. Where in 5 years or 10 years, some of them was 2 or 3 years, the doggone rate was resetting high, where they couldn't even pay the doggone mortgage no more, and that's why they lost their house. They're still doing those loans. And so if you're sitting there overpaying for a house just so you can win a bid, you didn't win, you lost. And I'm gonna go deeper on this maybe on another live where I just talk about housing. The goal always in the spirit, I'll tell you in the spirit, Ashley, the goal is when you're looking for a home, if it's in the neighborhood, if you plan to build it or whatever, you always buy or build the least expensive home in the neighborhood, on the block. You don't sit there and try to be bigger and better than everybody. What are you doing? Like, you don't do that. Because guess what? Now your house can't appreciate. So this is what I did. My house is the least expensive house on this street because I found an inexpensive builder, first and foremost. Okay, so their homes on this street, I seen one of them sell a long time ago. It was like $150,000 above my house value at the time. But what that did was made my house value go up. So what I started with, my house is now worth almost $40,000 more than when I built it. Because I built a home that cost less than all the other homes on the street. So every time one of these people sell their house for a higher value, it makes my value go up. A house is the biggest investment you will make in your life. You cannot go into it rushed. You can't go into it because everybody's trying to get it. You got to go in there with the right mind frame, because if you don't, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose for 30 years. That's a long time to be losing. And just understand that 2008, 2009 was a nightmare for a lot of homeowners because they were underwater in their houses because this housing market had pushed up the value so high, ridiculously high, that when it cooled down and prices readjusted to where they were supposed to be, they were $50,000, $70,000, $150,000 underwater in their mortgage. Like the house, they couldn't sell it. And they still owed the money. And that is what's going to happen to these. Sorry, guys, on Instagram. I had a phone call. And I'm about to take that phone call. So, I've been on here longer than I said I was going to be on here. But guess what? Just know that look at the replay on Facebook. Look at the replay here on Instagram. I talked about supply and demand when it comes to the gas situation today. Talked about it with the chicken shortage. Talked about it with the jobs. And talked about it with housing. If you are looking for a house right now, don't fall into this trap of what's going on. You are going to lose. You're going to pay too much for a house, and that house is going to readjust its value, and you're going to be underwater when it comes to that mortgage. It's going to be a nightmare. So you're welcome. You're welcome. So feel free to watch this live over. Like I said, this is impromptu. The gas thing today didn't sit right with me, and I just started thinking about supply and demand, and I was like, we're going to talk about supply and my friend said, I can't stop now. Yeah, I got to stop because my phone call, I got to go to my phone call. It's just supply and demand is real, and I wish we as people would understand the power we had. If we could stay home for a few days and don't go buy no gas, our prices will go down like this. Gas prices go down like this. You see what's happening with the jobs right now? Ain't nobody trying to go out there and get no $9 job. And now these places that could have been paying $15 an hour are now talking about paying $15 an hour. Talking about $200 and $500 sign-on bonus. Talking about in 3 years at Chipotle, if you work with them, you can be earning 6 figures. Where does been at? But the masses have the power if we could just not panic. If we could just not panic. All right. So off my soapbox now. That was it. Supply and demand. If you understand that, life becomes a lot easier. hold out and we may get health care for our workers. Maybe. But those of you who don't have health care right now, make sure you get in because they've expanded on the marketplace exchange and you can save some money right now. Definitely, you can save some money right now. Thanks. Yeah, so I think that's it. I have ranted long enough. I can't think of anything else to talk about with supply and demand. But when you understand it, you can definitely save some money, make some money, that kind of thing in all parts of life. Yeah, so that's it. So I hope everybody has a great night. I will holler at you all soon. Bye-bye.